Good morning, members, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, and very welcome to our fourth Citizens' Assembly on drug use. I hope, members, you all had a reasonably good break in summer, with all the good weather we had in July in particular, and hope you've all come back nice and refreshed. Before I do formally open with my few opening words, I just want to firstly recognise the very sad passing of John Bennett. John, who you'll see from our screens here, presented to the Assembly. At our last meeting, John was the coordinator for the Finglas and Cabra Drugs and Alcohol Task Force and a very committed person to this sector. I know him from his time in the Finglas Cabra Drugs Task Force, but also a coordinator at a national level as well, and he made a very passionate presentation to us all. So our thoughts and prayers remain with John, his family and all his colleagues in the sector. So very briefly, just to say, after today, we will be at the halfway mark, over the halfway mark in our process, the fourth Assembly, and we've an intense period ahead in the next 7 weeks where we 3 Assembly meetings in total. At the end of this weekend, you will have received over 50 hours of presentations from academics, people working in the sector, statutory, non-statutory bodies, individuals, families, communities. Quite a comprehensive set of presentations. We'd have received over 800 submissions, which you'll have had a chance to see some of them, and we'll summarise them in a moment. We've had visits to site visits to some of the service providers in the area. We've had a look at international and national practice. And we've also looked at 2 of our 3 legs of the stool that we've been mandated to look at in terms of recommendations, which is the policy area and the operational or services areas. And then, particularly today, we now start to focus on the other aspect, which is the issue of criminal justice and legislation, which is our focus for this weekend. And before we just head into this weekend, I do just want to summarise very briefly some of the themes that have emerged in the past 3 Assembly meetings. The one which I think struck us all is the whole issue of trauma, how people suffer early life trauma leads to some people using drugs, addiction and criminalisation, stigmatisation, marginalisation that happens in some communities and individuals. The whole issue of many different reasons. Johanna Ivers always reminds us different reasons why people will use drugs. A very strong team came through at our last Assembly meeting around the whole issue of governance and oversight, particularly political governance and oversight, and the need for a strengthened oversight of this whole complex issue across government departments, and particularly whatever recommendations emerge from this Assembly. The very changing nature of drug use, the researches that we've had presented to us about the changing nature of the drug use and types of drugs being used. And indeed, a very strong team coming through in the submissions and elsewhere that many people believe they can use certain type of drugs and not receive any harm as well. And certainly from our visits to the services, a strong team came out around the issue of pay and retention. A lot of services here are delivered by voluntary community organisations and Section 39 organisations, and they did present to us how difficult it is to retain and recruit staff at a lower pay that would be available in the other some of the statutory services. But we also heard a theme of hope when people get into services, some of the real hope and testimonies that we have received. The focus for this weekend, as I said, is on the whole issue of criminal justice and legislation. We'll hear from policing, courts, probation services, and then tomorrow we'll have a kind of more time to have a greater engagement in a kind of workshop format. You will have received a paper circulated by Cathal and the Secretariat, which I think is a really good baseline to give everybody an understanding of some of the issues that can be seen complex, and I think Cathal and the team have simplified them very well. So I would encourage you over the weekend to browse through that document. It gives us a greater understanding of it. And finally, a couple of things I just want to mention. We will all be anxious as we head now, and say over the halfway mark, how do we get to recommendations and how do we get to voting and balloting in October? I just want to put you at ease. You know, I think we will be in a better place by the end of this weekend, but we don't need to have all firmed up in all our minds what we want to be recommending on. There's still more to go in this process. We will all still learn the next 3 meetings, but we will get there. I'm confident where we're at and confident where we need to get to. But a couple of tips I would advise, just on my role as chair, when we do get to recommendations, think about keeping them, in my view, less is best than too many. I'm not putting a number what that is. Less ambiguous, very clear. And the one greatest advice I'd give you thinking as you go through today, and it's in the paper, we don't need to be the experts. We are not the experts on some of the legal issues and the complex issues. but we are the experts on all the comprehensive information we've heard, and we can set and should set the line of flight where we want to get to. But what I would urge is don't get too concerned. There's government departments, there's experts, there's the Attorney General's office who will design the legislation. Our focus should be to set where we want to get to. So in closing comments, I will encourage you again, keep the dialogue going at the table. We're not, I'll remind you, looking for consensus at the table. We're looking for debate and we're looking for good contributions. So let's enjoy the weekend, and thanks to all our invited speakers in advance. Thank you.